SOSG, 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 standing on solid ground. Hello, this is Kim with Standing on Solid Ground. I am your host of this motivational and inspirational podcast. And today I want to talk about the generations past and the generations to come. I was thinking while I was laying in the bed yesterday about the generations that we have lost. And we really don't pay attention to the generations or to the different ones that are in our generations before us until the last one is gone. And I was laying there and, God had touched me because I began to cry, to look at all that we have gone through in the past maybe 20, 25 years that I can go back and recall. And I remember when my grandfather had passed away, my father's father. And I was young. I was possibly maybe about 9 or 10 years old at the time, maybe a little older, when he had passed away. And I never really thought about it at that time that generations leave. It's like a soap opera. If you think about a soap opera when you first watched it 10 years ago and 10 years later, you may see a sprinkle of those who you watched 10 years ago, but there are a lot of new faces. And if you look at today's life, it's the same way. When my auntie passed away, I remember I had went up to the hospital to see her, and I visited with her for a little bit, and she kept calling my dad's name, and I called my dad and I said, Dad, Auntie is in the hospital. She's calling for you. And he rushed right down to the hospital. And I remember when my father walked into that room, and she reached out her hand to touch, for him to take her hand. And although that generation was not the generation to say, I love you, they weren't the type to say, I love you, brother, I love you. So they were not that generation. And God made me realize it was only 3 people in that generation left living at that time. And my auntie had reached out her hand and my dad took it, and I saw how strongly she held on to his hand and how strongly he held on to hers, that although they did not say I love you, their holding hands showed me how much they loved each other. And I'm sorry, because this is very sentimental and very touching, and you'll understand why when I go further along. My dad began to pray for her. And the nurses and, another visitor was in the room. And we all stood there and we listened to my dad pray for her. Well, unfortunately later down, and a few months later, she had passed away. And then later down in the years, my mom passed away in 2010. And my dad was in the hospital in 2019. And my uncle, which was his brother, came up to visit him in the hospital. And I watched them communicate because I left the room and I just stood on the other side. You can see through the door, but I closed the door so they can have their private time together, because we didn't know how long Daddy was going to be here. And I see my uncle put his hand on my dad's shoulder, and he was patting me. And he was talking to him, and, Daddy was talking back to him when he was, sober enough, because he was kind of elusive. The drugs was taking its toll on him. And he, uh, he touched my dad's shoulder, and he was patting him. And they were talking back and forth, and they never said, "I love you." But the way that he was patting my dad's shoulder, I knew that he did. And I could see in my uncle's eyes how much he loved him and how much my dad loved him. Although they fought all the time, but they still loved one another. And I remember when my uncle come out of the room, he came out, and my cousin, who was standing there with me, because we were talking, and she asked him, she said, "Daddy, did you tell him that you love him?" He said he knows. And, that generation just was not big on saying it. They showed it. And that's a big deal. Well, a week ago today, that uncle passed away. And he had 7 kids to care for them, care for him. Through routine, they would come and they did a routine with each other where, one was sat with their dad and another one was sat with them, and they gave each other shifts. And I thought that was pretty awesome to hear that they did that. But God touched me. He said that was the last one of that generation. They slowly faded away. And now my cousin, who is the son of my auntie, he is ringleader now. He's the patriarch of this family now. We don't realize how quickly time can get away from us. That we don't take the time to tell each other we love each other. Or we spend time with each other to conversate, to have fun, to play games, to have laughter, to watch television, whatever it is. We don't take that time to do it anymore. And I was laying there in the bed and tears was just rolling down my face, because I realized our generation, my generation now, is next in line, because that generation is no longer with us. My uncle was the last one. And I said, God, we make more time for funerals. We need to make more time for family. And it was a very touching and very emotional morning for me, because my pillow was soaked in wet from tears. Because I'm remembering how my dad and my uncle used to argue all the time. How they used to get into it about whatever it is that they were talking about. But they loved each other. And working on a car, or, because something wasn't working, and my uncle would come by the house and see what's going on. And Daddy said, "Well, I've been trying to work with this." And Uncle Rob would come in, and he would just say, "Well, this is what you need to do." And he'll put, he would go in and do something. And my daddy was standing there looking and said, "Really? I've been working on this for 3 hours. You come over here and do this, and now it works." And it would be so funny, because I would watch them bicker with each other the whole time. And it amazed me that was their love for each other, the bickering. I remember when my auntie was still living, and my dad, it would be his birthday, and my auntie would call and leave a message, because Daddy could be at the grocery store or something, and he'll come home and he'll listen to the recording and say, "Well, there's my sister calling me singing happy birthday. He said, why can't she just call and just say happy birthday? Why is she singing to me? And it will be so funny. It will be hilarious. We get away from one another, that we don't really see the generations leaving us until it's too late. You know, it's almost like if you think about the word of God, Abraham begat Isaac and Ishmael. I'm trying to get it together here. And then Isaac begat Esau and Jacob. But when Abraham passed, Isaac and Ishmael buried their father. And then when Isaac passed, it was time for the brother Jacob and Esau to bury their father. And so all I'm trying to say is this. We need to pay attention to our generations. They're slowly fading away. And then when that last one is gone and you're the next one in line, you're like, oh my goodness. We're next in line. We're the next generation. And then you look at your children and they're the next. And then your grandchildren and they're the next generation. It is so important for us to take the time out to say, I love you. And even if you have a hard time saying it, show it. My mom always used to tell me, no, loving is showing. Don't just tell me, show me that you love me. You can tell me you love me and slap the fool out of me. And I was like, wow, okay, that was pretty blunt. But my mom was like that. But all in all, what we need to do, we need to take the time out and say, hey, let's take some time out to come together as a family and talk with one another and learn who each other are. Learn about one another. Learn our likes and our dislikes. Let's not just take time out for a funeral. Everybody would stop everything for a funeral. But no one would take the time out to stop by and say hello. It can be for 2 minutes. It can pick up a phone. You know, when I told my brothers that we lost our uncle, I didn't text message them. I picked up the phone and called them. Because we are using electronics to get or to express our feelings or to get information over. But we need to take the time out to stop and talk with one another. Tell each other what's going on. What we need. What we expect. What we want. What we're looking forward to. We need to stop using these devices as that in-between person. You know, like when we were kids in school and you like somebody and you send that middle person and say, can you tell that person that I like them, instead of going to the person yourself? That's what the text messaging, the computers, the emails, the texting, this is what filled in. We don't have to have a middle person. We got a middle object. We need to take that time to say hello. How are you? I love you. I was thinking about you. Now, I will text a person in the event that I think it might be past their bedtime, that it might be something else that they do. I will text them and they'll get back to me whenever. But when it's something important, there's nothing wrong with picking up a phone or dropping by and say hello. I don't do stares very well. And, you know, I can be quite clumsy at times. But it doesn't stop me from at least picking up a phone. I would even write them a letter. Say, hey, I was just thinking about you. And that actually I did that to someone. I just didn't pick up a phone. I didn't send a text message. I didn't see email. No, I sent them a letter. It floored them. It sent them right over the edge. They cried because we don't do that anymore. Those things are touching. They're very sentimental. And we need to go back and get back to that point. I'm not saying that I don't text. Yes, I text. I'm not going to tell you that I don't send an email. Yes, I send emails. But I also pick up a phone and call. Or pick up a greeting card and write a little message in it and send it off. I also do that. It is very important to take that time out and say, hey, I was just thinking about you. It doesn't take much. There are those I know that you might get a little squeamish about calling because they'll keep you on the phone. And my dad was like that. He said, I don't know if I want to make this call because I don't know how long I'm going to be on the phone because my dad wasn't a phone person. But he'll sit and talk with you in the living room for hours. He just didn't like the phone. It's all about making the effort to say, hey, I was just thinking about you. That could change a person's life forever. The generation before is no longer with us. And we're next in line. Let's keep that in mind. This is Kim with Standing on Solid Ground. You have yourself a wonderful and blessed day.